Have you ever wondered what you might be missing as you walk down the paths that have been paved for you? Really, we live in a world full of wonder, and yet we follow the path that has been established for us. Even in what we watch on TV, we tune in to our favorite shows, like Good Little Minions. Well, this show is basically about what you might be missing as you walk down those paths, and what you walk by every day and didn't know existed. Hi, and welcome to a Walk Off the Bike Path. My name is Joe Galliette. I'm your host, and today, again, I'm going to be picking up where I left off with a man we had on our first show. His name is Dr. Paul T. Picciano. Paul is the founder and director and principal facilitator at Pressator, a revolutionary and futuristic system that restores functional normalcy in the human brain. Paul is also the founder of Centers of Neurofunctional Restoration Incorporated, a not-for-profit 501c3. In addition, he is the founder and owner of ISD, the Institute of Self-Defense in Farmington, Connecticut, in which he holds a master's black belt ranking in the arts of Taekwondo and Hapkido. He has earned a doctorate in cell biology and as related to human-centered cancer studies in subspecialty in neurobiology. Paul and I were neighbors in 1980 when he first started his journey. From time to time, we would see each other and catch up on our lives, but this time he blew me away. And like I said in the last show with him, just amazing things that he's working on, and I just really need to get the word out and get this man whatever help I can give him. Paul, welcome back. Thank you for being here once again. And well, it was on a roll at the last moment that we were going. We were talking about so many things. I even forgot, my head is still spinning. But what I do want to get to is a couple of things. First off, for people who didn't see the last show, this is about autism mostly, and about Asperger's and ADD and ADHD and all of the things that you can imagine that are diagnosed with in our schools today. Like I was saying in the first segment, 1 in 68 kids is diagnosed in this country with autism. And that's a pretty high number, and this man is, along with some a lot of well-meaning people, have been trying to do something about it. But Paul's program is different. Paul's program deals entirely with, shall I say, he uses his entire education from his studies with cancer and studies with his doctorate to form a whole new way of approach, his whole new approach to dealing with people with autism. So without me telling too much and getting off subject, I'm going to just ask you to pick up a little bit on some things. One of the things you talked about before. Well, let's start with the fact that you run a martial arts school. And in the last segment, we touched on why that was important. And I want to get back to that, just to give a fundamental overview for the people who are watching that might not see this as a program for them concerning their kids with autism and the other things. But you do it out of your martial arts studio, right for now anyway, but with a broader sense of what's going on with your offering. So let me start there. Let's go back to your ISD, your Institute of Self-Defense in Farmington. Why is it so important that martial arts be part of the program?
Well, again, thank you for having me. The last show was extremely enjoyable, and this whole journey is something that found me. I never found it. It just sort of pulled me along. The fact is that our program has a breakthrough perspective of development or lack thereof being responsible for a number of things. Humans are in constant development, and I'm talking about biologically as well as intellectually in terms of behavior and so on. Children at birth, when you stop and think about it, learn naturally. They're born with the hardware, their brain, and the software to actually pick up information, and without any prompting, just nurturing, they learn about 80% of everything they need to know by the age of 5 years old. And one of the things that they're in constant pursuit of is moving. As we all know, for people who have had children, moving, constant movement, and that constant movement helps bring about development. Movement of the body helps develop that brain. Movement of the brain into a more mature state helps the mind connect with the world outwardly by picking up data and through expression, interacting with people, interacting with the world as a whole. And that's extremely important role that the body plays in all of this. The body is crucial. I look upon martial arts as a rehearsal for all of life. It requires a character formation in a true system. If we look into Chinese systems, it goes way, way beyond fighting. It goes into character formation, human formation, as sort of the basis of our society, the basis of our families. And in this particular case, I use it to teach the movement mechanics to help bring about development. Children who have ADD are in constant movement in search of something that's much more calming for them. Hence the frustration and the hyperactivity. So through this movement, we're able to actually organize these children in a way and calm them down and center them to the point where they're very calm. They do much better in school. But it's movement that brings about the cessation of movement in their case. It's movement that brings about the development of brain. It's movement that develops the development of character. And it's movement that develops the development of intellect, because as that brain grows with the proper instruction, that brain then can build to what's necessary by following a set form of processing. Namely, here's the steps to follow in order to do this, that, and the other, and be in control of your body, and be in control of your emotions, and be in control of everything. So that's why ISD has formed as a platform incubator for all of the programs that I developed ultimately.
And let's go through those again, just for the sake of people that have not seen the first show. What is it that the segments and the compartments that you're working on?
I first started working with children who were visually impaired to provide a sense of walking, to provide a sense of poise and presentation, if you will, to be able to learn in classrooms, to be able to interact socially, to be able to normalize as people, as children that they are, because development has to do with the building out of IQ and EQ. EQ being interpersonal relationships and the ability to give of yourself to other people. Children who are blind can't do that very well. And in working with children and adults, by the way, who are blind, they have no clue as to how to do this. There's no way they can see, which is a huge function in their lives.
Is this where Molly came in?
This is where Molly came in. She was a student in Canton, Connecticut, whom I met, and she became a cornerstone in the Precitor program that allowed me to build out a number of other platforms.
Let's talk about Molly for a minute so that we don't lose the people.
Right.
When you met her, how old was she and what was the condition?
Molly was in 5th grade. She was a 2nd grade or so aptitude in school. She rarely paid attention to what was around her.
And this is because she was blind?
She was totally blind from birth. She would be in class with her head down, twirling her hair. She had no understanding of sequence of events in life. You'd say to her, so tell me, what did you do yesterday? Well, I rode my bike, I had supper, I got up from sleeping the night before, I climbed the tree, and then the next thing I knew, I was changing my pajamas and basically you're seeing this thing all jumbled because, quite frankly, she never saw or developed the concept of sequence. I want a glass of water, I stand up, I walk across, I grab a glass, I turn the faucet on, I put the glass under, I turn the faucet off, I bring the glass in my mouth, I walk back to my seat. That's a learned behavior. And you might do it, but if you're doing it unconsciously or unaware of that sequence, you don't understand the executive function involved in all of that. She was not able to truly walk. She had a fixed walk. She walked with a cane, to which she sent all of her attention to. And by the way, adults who wind up with late onset blindness, and I'll tell you, my father himself is blind.
Is that right?
Yes, through macular degeneration. But fortunately, I was able to intervene with him before he left awareness and then got caught up in not knowing what's going on. But in any case, the point was, for Molly, she had difficulty learning in classrooms. She had difficulty walking around. She had difficulty knowing what was around her, environmental management and awareness. She had difficulty with social interactions because she didn't have those skills.
How old is she now?
Right now, she probably is in her 20s, and she actually wound up going from second grade aptitude in fifth grade to an honor roll student and did spectacularly in school.
Wow.
She also was able to move about freely, actually without her cane on occasions. But nobody knew that she was blind as a result of that movement because I instilled actual normal walking gait patterns in her and sensing awareness of things around her such that she could actually avoid objects. It's not a miracle. It's just understanding how the body, mind, and brain work. She was able to interact with students. She was able to do expression in writing and speaking. She tells humorous stories of how she would, go to maybe second or first grade classes as sort of a show and tell, and those kids would start screaming at her. And at this point, she had already developed beyond her visual impairment, and she would look at them and say, "Could I just say something?" And they would say, "Yes," as they're screaming back at her, and she'd say, "I'm blind, I'm not deaf." So that was a case study of Molly.
Sense of humor along with it, huh?
Yeah.
So we got off track just a little bit with that. That's the one aspect of this, and that was with the blindness. Tell me more about the different compartments of your...
Right. So that provided a number of platforms. From there, I was able to move towards autism, where I work with children with autism. My goal with autism is not to teach them life skills, but to teach them skills that are typical in life, where we help them become functionally normal through conversation, through ability to act properly, to bring in information. We have one such individual who is now 25. She is, when I first met her, she was unable to walk properly. She didn't speak. If she turned her head, her eyes moved as if fixed in her head. She was not conversant at all. She, except for an occasion, but it was rote, same statements all the time. Right now, we're working on normal walking. We're working on normal walking patterns. She's reading. She reads out loud. She does mental math. She's actually able to pick up information. She's developing intersocial relationships. She's normalizing, as well as other children that I've worked with. The other thing is that as part of This program, we've just started working with people who are looking at dementia, as the rest of their lives, senile dementia, not Alzheimer's. And we find that dementia is actually a co-partner with autism. The same things that are afflicting children who can't develop, people who are normal pass into dementia through the same gateway that children with autism have to pass through. And we can then essentially use similar tactics and strategies with these individuals who are becoming childlike again. And lastly, our walking program, which is involved in dementia as well as blindness, as well as children who have had other challenges, come about through these mechanics of movement that we teach at our school. But all of this has to do with learning. And there's one category that is challenging American economy big time, and that is children who don't do well in traditional classrooms, who don't learn in a particular way that is being taught. And then perhaps 80% of these children struggle across a full spectrum. And when they don't do well, there are a lot of psychological consequences, there are a lot of behavioral consequences, and of course, there are lifetime economic consequences for them as well as for our nation.
So you value what they're not discovering in these other people, or
I value what human design is, namely, first that they have dignity, that their design is a particular format through which they can, and if there's something missing in that design, then what we do is we just put back those skills.
I always scored low on SATs when I was in high school, and I came out as a consequence of that, not being really prepared for college. So I didn't go to college. I went to my own life, which included hairdressing. I'm a hairstylist. I've been for over 50 years. And I got my education through and behind the chair, through my clients. Realizing that personally, that I wasn't a stupid man. I just didn't learn the way they taught. This is what you're saying. The traditional measurement that people are in the current education system is just one small facet of the actual person, the being that they're trying to teach, and they're essentially marking them on a very, very limited measurement of intelligence.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
And so, so I see that there's quite a need for getting the genius out of the people who have been kind of tossed aside or at least overlooked. And I see that you're working on that. You talked a little bit before about, in private conversation, about the atom. Can we go to the structure of the atom and what that is all about?
Yeah.
How it fits in?
Well, yes, when it comes to autism, when it comes to dementia, even when it comes to children who don't learn well in school, the atom is a perfect example of what they represent. However, if you look at the atom, if people can remember their scientific lessons, in school, the atom consists of, for the sake of simplicity, protons and electrons. And both are attracting and looking towards each other to stay together. Protons attract electrons, electrons grab onto the protons, the nucleus of the atom, and then the electrons are distributed in shells or outer rings. The first ring is 2 and all others are 8. But if the atom only, the electrons and the protons in the atom only looked at each other, it'd be self-enclosed and would never ever be able to connect with another atom to make a molecule. So our matter comes about with multiple atoms all interconnecting in some way. And the only way it's done is in the outer shell, which is lacking atoms, lacking anywhere from 7 atoms to 1 atom. So where there's an opening for one more atom, something that has an electron can attach in that space. If you do this as an analogy, you could look at a child who has a mind and a brain. The mind is the atomic interaction, electrons and protons. The brain is the structure, but the outer shell is really the body. And without that body, children who don't develop it in a particular way through movement can't connect with the outer world. They can't get data. Now, the point of all this in keeping with learning in schools is there are 16 different predispositional learning styles. And if you look at learning styles as sort of an operational system for computers, one computer may not be able to work with that particular. Do you know anything about this?
Tell me about it. I've been trying to figure that one out for 2 months.
That's right. An operating system for this computer may not work in this particular computer. These are different operating systems, only 3 of which, of the 16, are capable of learning naturally the way things are being taught in the classroom, while 13 are not. 13 are not learning the way these 3 are naturally aligned with how teaching is these days. It has nothing to do with the teachers. The teachers are pulling their hair out, attempting to help their students. These teachers are dedicated. They want to help. They agonize. I know so many teachers. I've taught at all levels myself, and they're frustrated. But it's the system. What has to be done is to go back, and this is what Pressator has done, is gone back to childhood learning at birth, which I call natural learning, where they're set up with a natural software, if you will, and hardware to naturally learn what's around them and put ideas, concepts, thoughts together all by themselves. They even learn how to walk by themselves, really, with some aid, of course, in nurturing. But give them time, and just by looking, and they would certainly do that by themselves. So all we've done is taken those lessons, asked what do people need, and what's needed in life from this member of society. And we developed the Pressator educational system by which, using those learning principles at birth, the natural learning principles, we're able to educate all styles at the same time, but specifically those who don't do well in school, to meet the challenges of 21st century America.
And just to touch on it a little bit, you said something about the Bluetooth effect, or Bluetooth.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, the Bluetooth effect is works with people who have difficulty walking, or, for example, who've lost the ability to walk, or who never had the ability to walk due to some challenge such as cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis. We have one individual, a good friend of ours, who was burned over 40%, third-degree burns over 40% of his body, who actually lost the ability to walk. And the ability to teach them the skills of walking according to movement mechanics that I developed through the martial arts and through my understanding of science is done in a particular way. And people say, well, how do you do that? That's incredible. Well, first of all, you have to know what normalized walking is. Secondly, you have to see what's missing. And then the third thing is, the brain is waiting. It's essentially a computer just waiting for input. But if there's no connection to a portion of the body needed to walk, whether it's core muscles or pelvis, hips, or legs or knees or whatever, you have to attract the brain to it. So I use the brain as a cell phone, and I use the legs and arms and other parts of the body as Bluetooth. And through oral instruction as well as certain exercises, we track the brain. The brain says, oh, there you are. Grab it, set up a circuit, and then basically it amplifies to create normalcy.
I can't believe we're out of time again. this goes by so fast. There's so much more to discuss. Again, will you come back and
absolutely.
and tell us more about what's going on? Paul, thank you so much for coming. It's been an awesome enlightenment to just be in your presence and talk with you. I did want to touch just one quick thing, if you can do it in 30 seconds. You're working with prosthetics or somebody that has got a prosthesis, and you're in dialogue with the prosthesis makers. Is that true?
We're approaching them. They have been some indirect contacts made for us, and we're talking about a number of different things that will vastly improve prosthetics as well as individuals who need to use them.
Well, thanks. Paul, once again, thank you very, very much for being here. And for you folks out there, if this has been kind of a interesting program for you and would like to comment back, there will be a place to do that. Please like and share this with people. It's going to be on YouTube as well as through SCTV. There's going to be like a link to contact Paul, and like I say, when you put into the subject box, please specify SCTV-ISD for Paul, and for me you can do SCTV and WOBP. We're, like I said, just out of time. I'd love to hear your feedback, and thank you once again so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
And bringing this very important work to light. It's great. It's a great thing that I think you're doing.
SCTV too.
And we thank SCTV, absolutely. All right, well, thank you very much for being with me, folks. Ciao, and God bless.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.